So I'd like at some point to have the courage that whenever people ask me what do I do, that I can answer with these words that were written by a good friend of mine. I love them, and yet they keep on hurting themselves and one another. And so I keep loving them, knowing and believing, trusting that they will one day love themselves and one another. When they realize that every life and all life is of equal importance and priceless value, no longer will they harm others in order to protect themselves. Instead, they will learn to give of themselves in order to protect and bless one another. So many are so afraid of being hurt, and in so fearing they are potentially bringing hurts upon themselves, and perhaps even those around them. It is as easy as trusting life and loving all children. Loving all the innocent children results in loving the parents and all others who also love the children. As the children receive and believe in love, they grow up trusting and unafraid. Their thoughts are brilliant and beautiful, resulting in brilliance and beauty manifesting and being created through and around them. I love and I bless the children. So, once upon a time, a long time ago, and in no time at all, there is a land that we now call America. And in that time, many years ago, when the chiefs of the tribes first began to gather, the men and the women, the chiefs of all the tribes, they came with a question. And they said, how will we govern our people? What are the key principles that need to guide us? And the answer to their question was that they looked outward, and they looked into creation, and they looked into nature. And they said, if we look with care and with love, and we see with our hearts, we will receive all the guidance that we need. And they looked out into the magnificence of creation. And the first thing that they saw was the balance of the masculine and the feminine, and how everything in nature worked with this balance. And that when the balance was out of kilter, that suffering would take place, and things would begin to go wrong. And often those that would suffer most would be the young of the species. And they decided that there will always be men and women in our circles as symbol of the balance of the masculine and feminine. And they looked again and said, what else is it that guides the beauty and the way that nature flows? And what they saw was that when things weren't right, the masculine would be more dominant perhaps, and the feminine not be, and that they would have to redress it. They saw how the hyena, with her young, sometimes would circle the young in order to make sure that the males didn't steal the food. And it seems that it's quite indicative of what's happening these days. That there is too much patriarchy and not enough of the feminine. The other thing that they decided when they looked out upon creation was because of how when things were not right, that the young would suffer. They decided that what they would do is that they would light a little fire for each council meeting at their circle of law. And they called that fire the children's fire. And they said that we will light that fire to remember that no law, no change, no decision will be made until we first look and see how will those decisions affect our children. Can you imagine a society, a peoples that are governed by those principles? It may be a little tricky because we seem to have wandered away from that somewhat. So, because we have wandered away, the African proverb, which I think is in the brochure, comes to mind. If we don't initiate the boys, the children, they will burn down the village. And because our children, our young, somehow have not become the most important thing in our societies, in our governments, in our corporations, then there is a lot of burning taking place. And what does that burning look like? Sometimes it's an outer burning, crime, violence, destruction. And sometimes it's an inner burning. Like with Gavin, who has no belief in himself, a young man that I work with, because he spent too long stood between his crack-addicted mother and father while his father beat his mother and he tried to get in the way and stop it happening. It looks like Toby, who I work with, who constantly speaks of suicide and how it's there, the voices in his head all the time. It looks like Tom, who was too scared to leave his house because the anxiety was so great. It looks like Isaac, who cuts himself and hurts himself. But it's my belief that society grows great when old men plant trees in whose shade they know they shall not sit. So we do what we can, remembering that there is a bigger picture than this human experience. We have lost our initiation of the boys. We have lost our rites of passage. And so the villages burn inside and out, and women are disrespected. And there is pain. But it's as it is. And it seems to me that there are many levels of rites of passage, of initiation. What is initiation? To begin, to initiate, to set out in the right direction, to equip our young men with some knowledge, with some wisdom, with some kindness, with something in their backpack, so that at least they have a chance of their arrows flying true. But as there are many layers, it seems to me that life is an initiation. Maybe this life here of ours is an initiation of our souls. Because I don't know about you guys, but it sometimes feels like that to me. The challenges that are put before me. And with each challenge that we overcome, we learn and we grow. And we have the opportunity to open our hearts and be filled with compassion and empathy for our fellow human beings who are also going through their own rite of passage. There are a few principles that I would like to share with you that, for me, feel key to initiation and rites of passage. I don't perform ceremonies as such with the young men that I work with. I work mostly with traditional youth type organisations. I work with looked after children in the foster care system. I look with disadvantaged youth, mostly who are not in education, employment or training. But I infuse the work that I do with them. When they are with me, they are infused with these principles of initiation. Because so often it seems to me that it's not about what you do, but it's who you are. And when they're with me, they don't know quite what's going on, but they are absorbing it. And they change. And the organisations say, Miguel, I don't really know what you do, but it works, so just carry on doing it. And you know, sometimes all I do is I share food with them. With the looked after children that I work with, I have an hour and a half with them once a fortnight. I turn up in my car, I pick them up from wherever, outside the school or from their homes, and I say, where are we going to eat today? And usually they want to go to McDonald's or KFC, and I'm okay with that. So we go and we sit and we share some food and we talk. And then maybe afterwards we'll go and have a game of pool and we'll talk. And sometimes some of the lads just like to drive, and we get in my car and I hand them my iPhone and they get onto the iTunes and they choose some tracks and then we turn up the volume and we wind the windows down and we just drive. And I see the music that they choose, it doesn't resonate with me. But it resonates for them. It's full of pain and violence and anger and drugs. But that's where they are. And we have to meet them where they are. There are too many systems and organizations trying to change and fix. So I meet them where they are, and at the same time I challenge them. Once there is some trust, once they know deeply that I care, I can challenge them and I push them a little. And one of the things that I always challenge them on, probably a good audience to be sharing this with, is that you do not disrespect the feminine. And if they put on a track and I catch some of the lyrics that I would say are not respectful of the feminine, I say, let's have a different track. And a few of the other principles, I guess, that are really important to me in rites of passage and initiation that are infused in the way that I work with the young people. 3 R's. The first one is responsibility. This was touched on yesterday with Katinka. To respond with ability. Because it seems that as young men grow up, they want all the rights of being an adult, but they're rather reluctant about taking the responsibility of what it means to be an adult. And for me, as your responsibility rises, then your rights rise as well. There's a simple formula that I share with all of my boys. E plus R equals O. Event plus response equals outcome. We don't always have a choice over the events, the things that happen to us in our lives. But what we have total control over is how we respond to those events. Note that I say respond, not react. It's not a knee-jerk reaction. It's a pause, and it's getting centered. How will I respond to this? And that our response will determine what the outcome will be, whether it will be a painful outcome or whether it will be an outcome that benefits us. The second R principle is reciprocity. And it seems to me that this is severely lost at the moment. This idea of as we reap, so shall we sow, and that everything is cycles of give and receive and take. And our society teaches a lot about, how much can I get for myself? And it's a kind of dog eat dog. There's not enough for everybody, so I have to grab it for me. Sod everybody else. And look where that's got us. So, the reciprocal principle is very key. The last of the R's is resilience. That it's okay, it's natural, it's part of life's journey that we will fall down. But it's not how we fall, it's how we rise. And in our falling, there is so much potential for learning and growth. It's through our mistakes, which aren't really mistakes, they're not a negative thing. It's okay to fail. There is no such thing as failure, there is only feedback. If we get something wrong, it's just feedback saying, okay, how do I need to do this differently? If the result of our actions is pain, then pain is showing us what I am doing, what I'm believing, what I'm thinking is not in alignment with my truth. I need to try something different. So, to be resilient, it's okay to fail. Sometimes when we fall down, it's a good opportunity to just roll over and have a look at the stars for a while. All this masculine stuff of do. Let's just pause and let's just take stock. So, those are some of the principles. And I know that some ladies have spoken to me already about, I have boys and I'm not quite sure what to do. I'm really interested in what you will share. And some of those things, those 3 R's, we can all share. And remember that the children learn not from what we say, but what we do. If we model that ourselves, if we model our failures and say it's okay, then it gives them permission to fail as well. But probably the key thing, the most, in all the private work that I do and all the kids that I work with, the one thing that always stands out that is missing is security, boundaries, a container. You have to, as a parent, you have to get good at saying your no and meaning it. Because if your no does not happen and doesn't mean anything, then none of your yeses mean anything either. And so the children don't know where they are. Especially the young men, they need something to push up against, to know that they are held. And on the surface, it seems like they don't want that because they push up against it. But they're only pushing up against it to see where the edge is, to know that they are safe. That's why they push. And we have to be rooted and grounded in our own self-love and our own self-worth and our own love of the children, knowing that first I will be their parent, not their friend. First I will be their parent. So security, boundaries is always the thing that is missing. It's not cruel. Sometimes parents think to be a good parent, it's to give them everything, all that they ask for. That just leads to so much confusion and unhappiness. So, I guess Rumi's words really kind of like sum a lot of that stuff up for me, that both light and shadow are the dance of life. And that we need to teach this to our children, that it's not all about being happy and about being easy and about being positive and skippy and unicorny rainbowy. Not all the time. In fact, all that stuff comes when we have the courage to step into the fire of initiation, the initiations that life presents us with, that we don't run from, that we don't turn away from, that we don't numb ourselves with the myriad of different numbing tools that we have available to us, which I spent plenty of my years exploring. But what I found was that it doesn't matter how fast you run or how hard you run, you can't run away from yourself. And if life chooses to initiate you, you will be initiated. So I'd like to just finish on I don't like the word positive and negative because I'm moving away from duality so much more these days, but something perhaps, some food for thought, is to remember that although things are not great with our young people at the moment, that this is our human journey, our human rites of passage, and that there is a bigger picture. From a human perspective, it looks pretty bleak. But if we remember that this lifetime perhaps is just one little chapter of an amazing infinite book, and that we have to get lost to get found. And our children have to get lost to get found. And our children are the reminder that we are lost. So if we can just remember that and just perhaps every now and again soar on the wings of the buzzard or the eagle and look from a higher perspective and remember, it's okay. Yeah, there is a lot of pain and there is a lot of joy and there is a lot of beauty and there are a lot of seeds that are being planted here at this conference that will grow. It's my belief that everything is unfolding perfectly. Thank you.